right, guys. I said I was going to do this last week, part of my breakdown of the Dolphins' offensive line going into the season. But it took a little bit while, so I'm going to do the Miami Dolphins offensive line unit and how it stacks up as we see it now with the rest of the AFC East. Getting out of your division, mastering that division is critical. It's as big as it gets. You win that division, you automatically go to the postseason. You obviously know you face all these teams twice. And so as we evaluate our offensive line, it's not just what they're doing, or although you control your side of the equation, it's the biggest piece of the equation, but you've got to factor in who you're going against. So I'm going to match up the Dolphins offensive line unit plus the depth with the defensive front, defensive lines, not the front, the lines, because the linebackers I'm not going to put in there, with the rest of the division and see what things we can find. It's all going to morph into something different, but a nice rudimentary placeholder for a data point is what I'm going to try to get after. See? Comprendez-vous? I think I did all right. So I'm trying to be more succinct here. So I'm going to do this real quick. I was on TD's last night, Finn Talk last night. I thought it went really well. We disagreed on some things, but he's able to handle disagreement, and I respect that a lot. So go, if you can, check that out. I'm going to try to see if I can get him on this channel because I do think you should listen to everybody. And sometimes the guy or the gal that you disagree with, they're the most critical to pay attention to because that information can help change your eval to a better evaluation, or if it's vetted and it's not the right evaluation, it can help crystallize what you've already got. So, going to be on with Steve Malloy and Greg Main tonight, 6:30 Central Time. Come check me out there. Steve's a great guy. Greg's a great guy. Really knows ball. I'm going to have to be on my game, so come check me out there. Lastly, like, subscribes, comments, and views, all that stuff keeps me in the biz. I've been getting a nice little push from you guys, and I'm so grateful. So all you could do to help me out with that would be fantastic. All right, so let's get into it. Now, I got my notes here so I could stay on target. Evaluating units, as I talked about, is as much about the competition. You look at Peyton Manning when he was with the Colts. Every year, practically, a division winner to the Colts was guaranteed because the competition level was so low. Now, if you like poop to a goose going through poor competition, a little bit like what Manning had, you go into the postseason against the better competition, maybe you're not so seasoned enough, or maybe the illusion of success and potency is revealed to be not as great as it was because you were facing stiffs or semi-stiffs. So that's a very important thing for us. Obviously, AFCE success is critical. We've done pretty good over the years, but every year rosters change, and you can never just dismiss any team. And so we've got to always take our evals from the year before. You keep them there, but then you kind of got to rewrite the evaluation and rebuild it as the season goes. So these AFC East teams can totally change. You never know what it can end up like. I mean, who would have thought we would have won the division? Was it 2010? But, Brady tore his Achilles. So anything can happen. Let's see how this thing plays out. It is not going to be the total picture because there's a synergy on every unit. And so what you're getting from your offensive line or offensive front, including the tight ends, I'm not going to add those in, against the opposing front, that's got to be factored into what is their offensive line doing against your defensive front, because that trench battle on both sides kind of builds a synergy through the game, and if not always through a game, because sometimes you could have the better trenches to still lose, but certainly through the course of a season. Also, it's not the total picture either, because we have to remember that, as I've said, the synergy between the D front and the secondary, there's a merging there. It's a non-specific equation. But if the secondary covers for a pretty long time, it makes the job easier of the front to get to the quarterback and not have to put so many guys in the box. So that's not going to be in here either. This is going to be a raw weighting or look overview of these two units. So I'm going to show the fronts and the depth. And for the offensive line, depth, the value is different than on the defensive line. Really, like if you look at the Bills, you want those same 5 guys all season long, every snap just about. But the depth helps you when an injury comes, and then that can reshape the offensive line, and the offense too. But on the defense, these guys are getting gassed more than the offensive linemen. And so the depth talks about their staying power through a game, obviously through injuries as well, and over the course of a season. So keep that in mind. It's a major factor, but for different reasons for the offensive line and a defensive line. So let's start out with what I think is the weakest front. Doesn't mean it's going to be. And that would be the Dolphins versus the Jets. First, I want to take a little time to spend on our offensive line and depth group to kind of set the platter for what we have. And you can see here in this graphic, we've got Paul. Big guy. He can certainly move people. He's certainly not affected by power like a lot of the guys we've seen. But there's an unknown as how far will he grow? And that's going to play a major part. Teron was there. Teron could be left on an island. And that changes what the OC does and how this offensive line's played. So it's an unknown. Then Savai Anaya, he's a rookie. It appears like he's playing on the left side. You check everything with this guy. He is a darn good pass blocker at the minimum. Now, he's got a little bit of questions when you read his evals and draft reports when it comes to the bull rush. And then there's a little bit more on how he drives guys out. Moving from tackle to guard will emphasize this issue maybe about handling power because guys get shorter and bigger and it makes it more difficult to move them out. Got Brewer. I think Brewer is a steady guy. I think he's more of a second level guy than a mover guy, but he's solid. Then you got Daniels. Daniels has got the Achilles. He wasn't in mandatories. We don't know when that's going to heal enough for him to actually play and when he'll be 100%. And then you got Jackson. Jackson had a knee injury last year. It cut his season short again. And then he came into camp and he got another nick or something. We don't know. But he's a very big question mark. And I'm going to do another podcast showing how he does struggle moving guys. He does help in certain ways, but he does have flaws unless those change. But there should be a concern with this. An injured player who's always injured and got another injury and is not a Teron level kind of player. And then lastly, our depth right now is scary. We've got Eichenberg. We're told by Butch Barry he's a major piece to the puzzle. I disagree. We'll see. And so that would be the overall with our offensive line. There's a lot of questions that could play out that could be a positive, but there is some uncertainty. And of course, there's always Eichenberg lurking in the background. So let's match up the looks of the Jets versus the Dolphins. And you can see here, it's PFF. Don't take it for gospel, but it's just an expedient way to kind of reference something with images. They got McDonald, who's going to be a starter. He was a first-round pick. He struggled. I believe he got nicked up. He's good at the pass rush, but he struggles in stopping the run. It looks like we're emphasizing the run. They got Quinnen Williams, who's a stud, but he's been nicked up a little bit too, and he clearly needs help. When he gets focused, he gets worn down, and he can't be his best. He really needs somebody to draw those doubles off him. Hopefully he doesn't get it. They got Taylor III in here. He was a rookie in 2024, undrafted, 6'3", 305, but he had a pretty respectable season, only 261 snaps, but he was a pretty decent pass rusher. I do think this is the thinnest group. You look over it, they've got Nandi, Coward, Tufali, Mathis, Kingsley Jonathan is a 22 guy and very few snaps, but they are very, very thin in that interior. If Taylor takes a big step forward, it's going to be a major help for them, but you don't know. And so really their interior is the thinnest. It has the most questions. But they do have some nice prospects on the edge and bigger prospects. Now, Johnson, he was having a phenomenal year in 23, but he tore his Achilles week 2 in 24. What is he going to look like when he comes back? It's definitely going to take some time, just like I say with our guys. So without him, and without him being 100%, it really weakens that front. They also have Eric Watts, who was a 24 undrafted free agent, and he had a pretty darn good season too in limited reps with 231. Not much of a pass rush, a big guy, 6'5", 277, can stop the run. So does he take a step forward too? There's a lot of questions, just like us, a lot of unknowns that kind of going back into these UDFAs and probably putting a lot of hope on them to do their thing. But really, when you look at it, I think we do have the edge, but it's going to rely a lot on how this Jets front and his secondary, which took a big hit in free agency, plays out. So I do expect, at a bare minimum, for us to be at parity, if not slightly above them, unless worst case scenarios play out for us and best case scenarios for them. So we'll go now to the second group, which is a very interesting group, is the Dolphins versus the Patriots. There's a lot of unknowns there, but they could be the deepest and maybe a very tough front if things play out, but we don't exactly know. Now, they run a 3-4-4-3. They'll have, a 50 front or a 40 front, depends. But you can see they got White. White's a big guy. I think he's still developing. I think he's a stud. He does have a lot of power, and it does offer us some problems aside from Paul. I love Paul being there because he does offset the primary asset of White. But if you put White on the other side, then you're going to have Jackson, who struggles with power. They got Williams they spent a ton on. The guy's a solid player, pretty good player. I think he's still developing. Clearly they overpaid a little bit, but they needed help. They got Tonga, who's a big guy. Not especially good, but he's a big nose tackle. And they got Barmore. Barmore was on his way to, he was a pass rusher who struggled against the run. He came back. He looked really good. Then the following season, he had blood clots. If he's like he was 2 years ago, along with White, and then a Williams, and then Landry III, who is a long tooth, but if he's a smart movement guy, he was able to get off through technique and maybe a little bit of burst, that could pose a little bit of problem to Paul unless he gets himself together. He's not bull rushing, but he might be able to work around. And then you'd have White on Jackson. That could be a little problem. And then we're going to see with Williams and Barmore and Tonga how our interior work out. But you don't want Eichenberg there because that could be a weak link. Well, will be a weak link, but it could be a very weak link. Now, they got Joshua Farmer, who they drafted. He's a pretty darn good prospect. They picked him up in the 4th round, 6'3", 318, pretty big guy. So if Farmer plays out, you'd have Milton, Tonga, Farmer, and Barmore, and that rotation could present us some problems. But then they got Onfrey Jennings, 6'3", 255, not huge, but fairly big, good in a run blocking department, a run stopping department. They got Truman Jones, another guy same size. He hasn't had a lot of reps, but he showed something. Chasen, who's a darn good pass rusher. And so you add Landry and White to that equation, and it's a pretty decent depth group. They've got Bradley Swinson, 6'4", 250 in the 5th round. It takes time for these guys to develop. But that's a nice little combo. And as I said before, what I'm not going to talk about much, they've got a very good secondary. So it's going to really be important for us that I think to have a nice advantage for this offensive line to be able to run block, pass block. And when they run block, not just outside, but inside. And Vrabel has been noted to have the kind of defense, to understand defense on how to limit us. So it's going to be very important because his defense is all about, hey, try to run on us. And if we can do that, then they're going to be have big problems. But if not, it could be a problem for us. I don't know how it's going to play out, but I think this defense is going to be the steadiest part of this team. Still a lot of questions on the offense. Then, obviously, it's the Bills. It's been the Bills division for a while. We've got it. We've put points on, almost beat them in Buffalo last year. Their team's different. Our team's different. I know. But if you can put points on them, that will give us an opportunity to shock. We've got to steal at least one. But when you go over what they've done this offseason, I think they did a pretty good job, although not great. I'm not super, super high on what they did because I thought there were other players out there in the draft they could have got. They traded up. I think we kind of set that in motion by drafting Grant, and so they missed out in the first round. But we'll see. But you can see by this graphic here, they still have got Rousseau, who the guy resigned is going to be big money, but this guy is really good. He's not the fastest pass rusher, but he's pretty darn good in the run, and he can get after the quarterback. He's a well-rounded, pretty potent player. They got late in the first round. I think he's a problem, especially when you match him up with Jackson. Although, again, Paul, if he gets himself to another level, his size will offset Rousseau. Now, if you want to put Rousseau against Jackson, then you got Bosa. He's always injured. He could be a problem. The guy has got super talent. He just can't stay healthy. But inside, they got Oliver, smaller guy, and that kind of helps us because Savania is bigger than him, and that's a nice aspect. The size difference helps Brewer handle him, and Daniels while he's not a power play, he's bigger, and so that offsets it. But they got Holt over there, who's a pretty solid player. They've got Dwayne Carter, they drafted in the third round. He was a little bit off as far as production, but it was a rookie season. Where does he step up? They got Ngujabi, who's a pretty solid player. Still a little bit older, almost getting into that journeyman category. Daquan Jones, older, but still a problem. But they invested a lot in Deion Walker, who's a giant of a man, 6'6", 345. Although he has some issues, but some say, Bean says that was due to injuries, but he could be a problem. And then they got TJ Sanders. Fourth round was Deion Walker. Second round was TJ Sanders. And so they've got to bet that these two young rookies can really step it up. Maybe Carter takes a step forward, and then they have health here. But it's a pretty good rotation, at least, even if it's not top talent. You can rotate these guys in. And fresh D tackles, even if they don't meet up to the offensive line's talent, being fresh does give them a bonus and raises their ability. On the outside, I really liked what they did in the draft. I'm a big fan of Landon Jackson, 6'7", 270, 280. He's not a speed burst. He's a little bit stiff, but this guy can stop the run. He will test you, and I think early he's a great kid. I thought it was a great pick. And then you got Holt at the edge, 6'4", 310. He plays that D tackle spot. And then you got Espinosa, who can always be a problem. He's kind of like one of those just guys who kind of knows what to do, and he makes some big plays. So this front here is really fleshed out, although there are questions in the starting talent. Their secondary, obviously, as we know, has got some issues. We saw that last year. The safety group, is that growing? That's going to need to grow, or some of these rookie blues could really hurt them. But I do think if we get Paul playing well, Savania showing up, Jackson playing a lot of AFC, and Daniels being healthy, we can really test them. And we've shown with a terrible offensive line, we can make them pay because of our skills. And so we don't really need to go that far up the list in order to really test this team. So this is what it looks like at the early goings, but at least it's a good overview to help us kind of start to dial in on the most critical matchup in my eval, our offensive line, its growth, and how it's going to perform against these defensive fronts. Every step forward compared to the last couple of years, especially last year, is going to pay massive dividends this season. And it could either spell disaster or it could spell very nice surprise for success. We got to wait to see. Nothing on any of these teams is going to shake out perfect. Nothing is going to shake out totally terrible. Let's just hope if it does, it's not us. So this is the overview. I hope you enjoyed. I'll dial it in more once training camp happens. as I've said over the years, keep our eyes on this offensive line because it will play out big towards the success. So, hope you've enjoyed. Curtis saying, be well, go Fins. Curtis out. Start building your own online sportsbook today by getting signed up with aceperhead.com service that'll allow you to book action on sports from all around the world.